since Thanksgiving, the premiums have come down considerably. But this is a very short-term phenomenon, and it coincides with the new allocations for 2023 coming out that the mints are throwing onto the system. But it's a very small amount when I look at, and I'll get to your point on the Eagles in a moment, but when I look at the biggest distributors in the world and their price sheets, the premiums are lower than I've seen all year. However, the availability on these sheets in every category says limited, 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 or 25,000 ounces total. That sounds like a lot, but it's not. I mean, it's not a lot at all. And one event will bring us right back to where we've been for the last 3 years. For the last 3 years, we've seen nothing but elevated premiums, a considerably elevated premiums that continue to rise. And the Silver Eagle is obviously the one that everyone focuses on, as those premiums have been double digit, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, $16. I mean, at any point over the price of silver since 2020, since February or March of 2020, and they have never come back down. I don't know if that's indicative, if we use the Silver Eagle, as much as it is the inefficiency of the United States Mint. And look, I love the U.S. Mint. I'm one of 27 U.S. Mint authorized resellers. They've defined my career, but they've been incredibly inefficient. And the premiums on the Eagles are still elevated over 3 times what they were my entire career. And it's been 33 years I've been doing this. But indeed, whether you're talking 100-ounce bars or Silver Eagles, we have seen nothing but elevated premiums. But yet, Kai, you know, you mentioned Rick Rule. Rick has been a good friend of mine for a long time, and he might be the from a macro perspective, from this industry perspective, more in tune and brighter than anyone I've ever known. And he has a statement that he talks about frequently, where he says, "Look, if we take the entire financial matrix of the United States, from Joe Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund, and give it a percentage of metals ownership and allocation to their whole portfolio, it is less than 0.5%. He then goes on to say that if we take a 40-year mean, a 40-year average, that's 2.5% allocation. So someone has $1 million in their portfolio, they have 25,000 in precious metals. Seems pretty reasonable. Well, if that were to happen, it would be a 5-fold increase in demand, and like that, it's over. The demand would completely obliterate the little bit of supply. What it basically boils down to, Kai, is that you and I and the people we talk to are the pimple on the elephant's ass. And the elephant hasn't turned around yet to see what's going on, to itch that thing on its rear end, because it hasn't really caught wind of precious metals yet. And that has to do with the suppression of the COMEX market, the suppression of the paper prices by the 4 or 5 large bullion banks that have a reason for doing it. And when you look at the massive accumulation by an entity like JP Morgan, by Ted Butler's estimation, has 1.2 billion ounces of silver, 12 times what the Hunt brothers tried to accumulate, and close to 45 million ounces of gold, all told, the largest physical position of metals at one time. This is all misdirection. And here again, we find the biggest money in the world using the rhetoric, using the price, using the fact that so few people understand what's happening to reposition themselves. And once that happens, people wake up. The elephant wakes up, the crowd wakes up, and overnight they find that there's nothing there, that the supply has disappeared and the premiums have gone to the moon. And this is a microcosm of what we've experienced for the last 3 years, but nothing like what we will see when the elephant wakes up, when the mainstream wakes up, when just 5% allocation is demanded. Well, that's a tenfold increase in demand that won't be able to be met in this industry, that I can assure you. If you're not positioning now before the boat goes down, you're going to drown. And I hate to be pessimistic, but I think if you're not a contrarian right now, you're going to be a victim. And that's the truth of it.
No, and that's just investing we're talking about. We're not even talking industrial uses here. You brought up Elon Musk a couple of times, so I want to blend my next question a little bit and talk about OEMs. That's what Elon Musk sort of synonymously stands for. It as a chief owner of Tesla there. OEMs coming to the market and outlook of 2023. right? We've seen Tesla make, at least confirm talks with Glencore, for example, to get access to metals. Silver, sort of a battery metal, if you want it, like one of the greener precious metals, or maybe the greenest precious metal. Or yeah, maybe, I don't know. Bold statement here, because we got palladium and platinum in there as well. But like, how does that sort of develop over the next 12 months? Do you see the OEMs sort of coming upstream? I think we're seeing more of that. BMW just signed an agreement with Jetty Resources on the carbon copper side, carbon zero copper side. So I see that happening more. Do you see that happening on the silver in the silver space as well?
It has to. And maybe that's part of the large drawdown we're seeing off of COMEX. If they're not witnessing and realizing this, I'd be shocked. A guy like Elon Musk is 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And so if he hasn't secured his stockpile of silver and platinum and all the metals that he would need, and the rare earth metals that would be needed to facilitate battery production, they're out of their mind. And it's interesting, we're talking about going green here in the States, but the majority of all the rare earth metals that are needed for battery production are in China. And so when you talk about, very, very small stockpiles of silver that are available for delivery, and you need copious amounts, yeah, I think that it would be in their very best interest to, first and foremost, a guy like Elon, to try to disintermediate the entire process and go directly to the producer. And maybe we will ultimately see something like that, where these producers just sidestep the bullion banks, sidestep the process of bringing the metal from the ground to the end user, and make deals directly with the big industrials. And you're right, when you talk about industrial applications, that's one of the things that I think people need to understand about silver that makes it so unique, is that most commodities have one demand source. You look at something like copper, its primary demand drivers are industrial. Gold has a little bit, like in microchips, but mostly it's monetary. Silver, to me, becomes so unique because of the duality of its demand, where you have a renaissance that we've experienced in silver squeeze in global demand for silver, and rightfully so, based upon its ratio, or its relationship, not only geologically going back 5,000 years to gold, but also its price comparison. It's completely out of whack. But you have an expansion in green and digital applications where you need silver. And that's why it's called inelastic. You need a little tiny bit in order to make an end product, but without it, you're screwed. So you have to secure it. And if they are not bringing this integration into their the front of their mind, into an asset that is depleting in nature, that for 5,000 years used to have a relationship to gold of 16-1 in geological terms, meaning 16 ounces of silver were mined for every 1 ounce of gold. If you ask my good buddy Keith Newmeyer what that ratio is right now, he'll tell you it's 7-1 globally, meaning silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, very near the surface. The big deposits were found decades ago. So now it's only coming out of the ground at 7-1. At what point do we reach critical mass? There was a branch of the United States government. They're a geological branch of the U.S. government. I don't know the exact name. It wouldn't be hard to Google it. But a few years ago, they came out and said, by our estimations, due to the massive drawdown in supply and geologically the drawdown in what is available to be found, we suspect that silver will be, if not the first, one of the first elements struck from the periodic table of elements, where, it's like an animal that is becoming extinct. And so this is happening. And by the price, we would never understand it. But this is the manipulative world that we live in, where instead of the actual commodity controlling the price, it is the futures market, the tail wagging the dog, that is controlling the price. But what is betraying all of this is the drawdown in supply that we have never seen ever. In my 33-year career, I have never, ever, ever seen COMEX deliver virtually anything, or the LME.